we'll call the meeting to order at 7 o'clock. We'd like to inform all board member attendees that this meeting is being live streamed and archived for access at any time by our community members on the internet within 24 to 48 hours of the meeting's conclusion. Please rise for the pledge. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call.
Mrs. Barber.
Here.
Mrs. Junk.
Here.
Mr. Terry.
Here.
Mrs. Pavlak.
Here.
Mr. Rivas.
Here.
Mr. Lawler and Mrs. Witt are absent.
Okay, so with 5 members present, we do have a quorum. Would anyone like to move something from consent to new business? Nope. All right, so moving on, we'll go to the approval of the agenda. Is there a motion to approve the agenda? And a second?
Second.
And a roll call.
Mrs. Junk.
Aye.
Mr. Carey.
Aye.
Mrs. Pavlak.
Aye.
Mr. Rivas.
Aye.
Mrs. Barber.
Aye. Motion carries 5-0. We'll move on to board and superintendent salutes, and I don't believe there are any.
Nope, we don't have any tonight.
Nope. Okay, so we are going to move to public comment. The board values public input to inform our decision-making and to provide information and insight into what is happening throughout the district. Board meetings are held to conduct the business of the Board of Education and are required by law to take place in public. However, they're not public forums. We use the public comment section as an opportunity to listen to our stakeholders. For that reason, the board does not enter into debate or respond to questions spontaneously or without proper investigation and deliberation. In most cases, concerns or questions requiring follow-up will be referred to the superintendent. If you choose to speak publicly, we ask that you do so at the microphone, state your name and village of residence or your association with us for the record, and limit your comments to 3 minutes or less so that all who wish to speak may have that opportunity. Public comment is a maximum of 30 minutes with a 20-minute total length of time for any one subject. You are encouraged to seek a private appointment to discuss matters concerning individual students or staff members. While public education can be an emotional issue, and understandably so, the board strives to maintain a certain level of decorum at the meeting. Those who speak are expected to maintain a tone of courtesy and civility. The floor is now open to public comment. So if anyone would like to make a public comment, you can go to the microphone. None, after all that. All right, so we will move to the consent agenda. Okay, so tonight the consent agenda contains the following items. Let's see here. It's the approval of accounts payable and payroll, January 2020, approval of minutes of the January 13th, 2020 regular meeting, the approval of resignations of employment and staff, which includes one change on I-3, a school from KBK to KME for Kristen Westbrook, the authorization to begin preparation of next year's budget, and the following informational items: the student suspension data report, the employee position report, and the field trip notification. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
And a second? And a roll call.
Mr. Carey. Aye. Mrs. Pavlak.
Aye.
Mr. Rivas.
Aye.
Mrs. Barber.
Aye.
Mrs. Junk.
Motion carries 5-0. We'll move on to new business, approval of school bus purchase.
Yep, I'll turn that over to Dr. Fuchs and let her share the information.
Thank you. Tonight's meeting, I'm hopeful that we can move forward with the approval of the purchase of 5 one-year-old replacement buses. As we've discussed in a couple previous meetings, we've planned for this purchase by putting this expenditure in our financial projections. It did come out just slightly ahead of what we have in there at $408,515, but we'll adjust the budget accordingly in June and September when it's time to actually put it in there. Again, these buses will arrive in July, and they'll be paid for out of the transportation fund for the 2021 school year. They come with warranties, video cameras, lettering, delivery, etc. And we have, I've confirmed recently with our mechanic that he is still interested in the one-year-old buses. They serve us well, and if the board members have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Okay, any questions?
The new buses are roughly 90,000 or roughly 10,000 per unit more.
That is correct, 94,000.
Is that with all the cameras and stickers, or is it that plus more?
I believe it would be that plus the cameras. I don't believe that price includes the cameras.
But you got a rough
Couple
idea?
thousand, 1,500.
All right, so we're talking about
Yeah.
12,000 or more.
Yeah.
So 12,000 for, I guess I'm just, we get buses that got roughly 20,000 miles on them.
Sometimes they only come with 5 or 6, sometimes 10 or 12. It's always under 20. Yeah, but we've had some good ones, some medium, like 10,000, couple in the 15, it varies, however much they've used them before, but they're guaranteed under 20.
I guess I'm trying to put some sort of cost benefit to the additional 12,000 if it's worthwhile spending. Do you have any kind of analysis or?
Sure. I put a couple things on the back. I don't know that any of those address the cost benefit analysis. We are still allowed 5 years of depreciation on these buses, which I put into our transportation claim. Historically, if there's a mechanical defect, it's identified within the first year, so they're not giving us buses that have had problems. Additionally, it has the engine that our mechanics or value. Additionally, they're trained on this engine, so that helps with that servicing. And then in terms of dollars, I've got 2 things. One from another district from a couple years ago, so it's aged. But what they did is they took the average cost of repairs or maintenance, not fuel, from a new bus to 5 years old, a new bus to 7 years, and a new bus to 10 years. The dollar and then a cost per mile. It appears that, and I did the same thing with our information. The only thing is our information only started in 2017, because that's when we started putting it in the system and keeping track of it. So a new bus to 5 years costs about 19 cents per mile for repairs. A new bus to 10 years old, so if all the buses that are new to 10 is about 27 cents per mile. So the older the buses, the more it costs per mile. And then the new bus to 7 years is about 24 cents per mile. Theirs was goofy in the sense that from new to 5, it was 18 cents. New to 7, 15, so it dropped. Not sure how or why. I'm sure maybe there was something in one of the 5 years that kicked it up or something. And then new to 10 was 22 cents per mile. Again, that data was a couple years old. So you can see that as the buses age, the maintenance on the costs do go up. When I talked to the mechanic, I asked him, when do the buses really start giving you a lot of problems? He said anywhere after 10 years is when they start costing and giving them more problems than others.
Is there a new bus versus a year old? Is just 1 year difference in warranty, or is there a bigger?
We get the same warranty. It's included in this price, the 5-year. It's extended. It's an extended warranty that they cost out for us. And that's the other thing in terms of, I think you had a question some other day about when they lose an engine on a bus, had they ever considered just getting rid of it? Since he's been here, and he's been here 4 years, they've had a couple engines, but they've been covered under that extended warranty, so he hasn't really had the opportunity to say, don't fix it, per se, because it's been covered. The year before he got here, we had an engine that he knows about, and he said that if it ever happened to him where he had to choose, it would depend on the age of the bus, the mileage, and the condition, because once it starts rusting, that's when it doesn't pass the inspection.
Okay.
So it would depend on a variety of factors before he would determine, yes, let's just drop this one and get rid of it. What they would normally do, which is what we do, some of these that we're trading in, they're sitting on the lot pretty much every day, unless if something goes down. Not all 5 of them. I think there's 2 right now that they don't use very often unless if they have to, of these 5.
So in your estimation, we're still better off with the 1 year?
I do believe so, and I know the year that we switched from the new to the 1 year, we were happy that we did,
Okay.
so.
One other question, what placeholder number did you use in the budget?
400, even, just 8.
Lost my piece of paper. Well,
It's on the front page of the memo,
Yeah.
8,515,
After the trail.
yeah,
Okay, I'm done.
great, thank you.
Anything else?
So we don't have to do anything to it, even the 1-year-olds? It comes equipped with everything we need?
That's correct, yeah. They used to rotate the tires because they'll take a couple of these tires and put them on the backs or something of the others. I can find out if we still do that. Some years they do, some years they don't. I think it depends on how many tires we have in stock based on what you needed the year before if they end up rotating. So, but other than that, they're ready to go.
Right.
We have to put our stickers on them. There's a sticker on the back and that we do that says, for erratic driving, call this number, and we have to have that. But otherwise, it's ready.
They've already been through safety lane then?
No, we take them. Well, they probably do it down there, but we still have to have our sticker.
Oh, your name has to be on it versus just, okay.
Yeah. It says it has a state safety inspection though, so maybe they pay for it. I would have to find out, because they have to have it to drive up here.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're good for a year, so if
Yeah.
the bus has been on the road somewhere, there's gotta be a remainder of something.
Yeah. So it comes with it, but I'm pretty sure we still take it at some point.
Okay.
Maybe it's halfway in. I would need to check,
Doesn't matter.
yeah.
How often do we wash our buses?
Sure. It depends. In the winter, depends on the temperature.
Okay.
But we try and do that often, but in the summer, we do a complete clean. And then when the windows are bad, they'll spray it down in that. We've got the bus washer that we use right on site. So when they pull them in, they'll run them through.
No, thank you.
It's, one of our mechanics has to do it. The
Oh, really?
drivers don't.
Ah,
Yeah, it's not automatic. So.
all right, thank you.
you
Anything
bet.
else? All right, so I'll entertain a motion that the board directs the administration to move forward with the purchase of 5 1-year-old replacement school buses in the amount of $421,515, plus the trade-in value of $13,000 for a total cost of $408,515 to be delivered after July 1st, 2020. Is there a motion?
So moved.
You have a second? And a roll call.
Mrs. Pavlik,
Aye.
Mr. Rivas,
Aye.
Mrs. Barber,
Aye.
Mr. Carey,
Aye.
Mrs. Junk.
Motion carries 5-0. We'll move on to J2, discussion of Keeneland Harder Middle School course book.
Yep, annually, our Director of Ed Services for 6 through 12 will come and share, like we do with the high school course book, and it's similar in the same setup and manner of 2 board meetings. First board meeting, there's a presentation, questions, and if there's anything that needs to be reviewed, that needs to be added. During that time, Mr. Raleigh would do that research, we would make sure we provide board with updates, and then if there are no further questions, or if they are all answered, this topic then comes back on the next board agenda as a consent item. So with that, I'll let Mr. Raleigh introduce and talk about the Harder Middle School course book.
Sure. So taking a look at the course book tonight, starting out with a little bit review of the process. It's a little bit different thinking of the middle school versus the high school. Mr. Faulkner meets with the building admin meet with different grade level teams, exploratory teams to see if there are proposals for new courses. If there are proposals, he sits down. There's extensive conversations on what the courses need to be, what data is showing you that there's a need for this, how do we support it. We take into effect if it has an impact on hiring, FTEs, what financial implications it has. Then it comes to my office. We put together the course book. We share it with the KEA, with the union, and then, like Dr. Layden had outlined, it's kind of a 2-step process. We bring those changes, any new proposals, changes, to you in the first meeting, and then looking for approval in February. I'll look at the timeline for this year. Upon approval from the board, we will first look to register our current 6th and 7th graders, and that tentative timeline is looking at about the week of February 11th. And then current fifth graders registering for their sixth grade classes. We're shooting for around that first week we get back from winter break, so I believe it's about April 6th. That happens when the fifth graders come over here to tour the building. They get a list of courses that they have. It's a little bit different for fifth graders because there's not a ton of freedom and leeway that they can have in course selection, but they get a sheet that is shared with parents, and then they come back and they register for those courses for their sixth grade year. New courses for 2021, we don't have any proposals for new courses. There was some that were outlined this year, or excuse me, last year that we'll update a little bit. But I think what our focus for next year is going to be is really looking at our proficiency tables that we have for our current courses, as well as some of the formative and summative assessments that go with those. So there are no new proposals for current courses, and there's a couple tweaks in the language for some current courses that we'll talk about here in just a second. Those courses are the sixth grade computer connections class and a seventh grade computer connections class. And it's highlighted, I know you guys can't see a color copy, but it's highlighted in green. The previous course description for those two computer classes had specific reference to career and technical education, and the new description, we brought that part out. The expectations, the programs, the content, all of those are the same compared to last year. The course description made an explicit connection to a product being linked to CTE, and that part has been taken out. Some of the reasoning behind that, number one, with our focus on personalized learning to explicitly connect a product to a particular field, we thought that might limit application of products. We didn't want to do that with the focus on personalized learning. There has been some discussions in the past of an exploratory CTE wheel, and it's only been discussions at this time. Looking at classes like financial literacy, engineering, some CAD classes, there's an interest, but in prioritizing all of the needs at the middle school, that combined with the implications that it would have for hiring, with financial implications, it just hasn't moved to the process of proposing actual CTE courses. So I believe that's where that link originated from, so we did remove that. And again, as we go through our curriculum review, as we have a united focus on the learner profile, on our I can statements, a lot of what is those career and technical pieces are embedded in daily practices. So when we do a curriculum review, we are looking at how does this, even as a sixth grader, impact me for college career readiness, community readiness. So a lot of those things, while it's not explicitly stated as being tied to career and technical education, a lot of those through other means are being addressed. And then an item of note that I inherited when coming into this position, I know that there was some discussion. Last year was the last year that the course of basic math was officially in the course book. This current 2019-2020 school year, it was removed. So just to give an update on why that happened, how it's looking. Number one, the need for that course has decreased. As we've strengthened our RTI program, as we started to see some of the implications from personalized learning, from really meeting kids where their needs are and in the mainstream Tier 1 class, the data we've started to see, and we can take a look at it here by grade level, the need for that class has really started to shift. A lot of those needs, like I said, are getting met in the mainstream classroom. And we do know that tracking kids into lower tier courses can have a negative effect. So we did, this is the first year that we don't have that specific course listed. And taking a look at the impact that it's had, we can take a look at the 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, but starting with our current 6th graders, we had 19 students, if we were using the criteria that was used before, 19 would have qualified for would have been the basic math course. That criteria, number one, looks at iReady assessment, the iReady diagnostic assessment. iReady is a nationally normed, they give a diagnostic assessment that adjusts to the individual user, the individual student taking that, and it gives a grade level equivalent to where they're at. So if we looked at those 19, 14 of the 19 in the last administration in 5th grade to their winter administration as 6th graders, 14 of those 19 have made growth. By growth, they give a beginning grade level, mid-grade level, and then on-grade level. So 14 of those 19 have made growth, 4 remained on target or on level, and 1 decreased. The one that decreased is that student has their needs met with some problem-solving teams and then teachers putting individual plans together. 12 of those 19 are receiving RTI services, so while they're not in a quote-unquote basic math class, they are having their individual needs met through that first level intervention. A celebration, 4 were dismissed, so they had previously had qualified for RTI intervention, and through the instruction of teachers in their class, they have been dismissed from that RTI class. The last bullet point on here is a baseline data point. It is the level that the students scored on the IAR, the Illinois Assessment for Readiness, which is the new or current PARC test. So we don't have comparable data for that yet. We will administer that again April in the spring. So this time next year, we'll be able to compare how we're doing on that test. Again, it's a standardized test. So we have a way of looking at how these kids are doing across grade levels. Yep.
What level should they be at? I mean, if they're like an average student, is an average student level 2, level 3?
It's a good question. It's their grade level. So if I'm a 6th grader, the average student would be at the 6th grade level. Then that iReady Diagnostic will give an early 6th grade or a mid 6th grade, but the way that reports out is that a 6th grader should be at level 6, a 7th grader should be at level 7.
So you're telling me that there were 3 kids that are at the 3rd grade level?
For
bottom line.
Oh, excuse me, down here. Nope. Nope, they should be at, I believe it's a 5 or a 6 as meets and exceeds. So the level 1, level 2, and level 3 for the Illinois Assessment of Readiness are the bottom 3 levels. We're looking to get kids to that level 5, level 6.
So the answer to the question is yes, if I hear it right. That's 1, 2, and 3, 4 and 5, or the rest of them. Or
Correct,
6.
correct.
No, yes, but no, it's not, they're not at a 3rd grade level.
Correct, that's not a grade level.
Assessment scale.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
And you said, I guess I'm having a hard time comparing, you said 14 of 19 increased on the iReady assessment, but that's a different assessment than the IAR at the bottom.
Correct. So looking at 2 different data points, number one, the one we use most readily is that iReady assessment. So the 14 of 19 increased a level. That doesn't necessarily mean it was the grade level. If I'm a 6th grader, their last data point could have been mid-4th, and they've increased to 5th grade. So they've increased in a level. It's just not necessarily the 6th grade level.
But does that tell us that they're increasing at a rate fast enough to get them to a quote-unquote normal class without assistance?
Without assistance, probably not. That's probably where the RTI comes in, the intervention piece comes in. As a grade level as a whole, that gap is shrinking. So the number of students that are on, in this case, at that 6th grade level, that number is increasing with the classes that they're taking.
Okay, but I guess what we would have done in the past is we would have had a class for those 19 kids.
Yep.
So I guess I'm still not quite understanding if those 19 kids would have been better off in their own class, or if putting them in the normal level classes helping them achieve success.
Right, and I guess the data that we have, I don't know if we could compare what they would have to, you're looking at different curriculum with the 6th grade, at the elementary to the middle school, it's different curriculum. I don't know if we have that data point to pinpoint. In 5th grade, they were here, but now because of the removal of basic math, that's what it is, but go ahead.
No, I'm listening.
Yep. It was a data point that we pulled that showed that they're not suffering, that they are closing that gap. At which speed, that depends on the student. Some are closing that gap at 2 or 3 grade levels, some are closing it at 1, but the bulk majority of those are closing the gap that they show at that grade level.
So in a big picture, how do we assess whether going to this method or the old method is more successful? Well, we made a change.
Correct.
And the goal is to help the students. How do we know that this worked versus the old method was better?
I think if we look at the number of students that were in basic, what we see is the students that were qualifying are, the gap is closing. I think I would probably need to do a little bit more research, but it's in pinpointing what that data would be. I'm not sure exactly what that data point would be.
And I don't know either.
Yep.
You made a change.
I think part of the challenge is they're receiving this treatment. This is like in a test study, they're receiving this treatment, not the old treatment. And even if you go back and look at former 6th grade, 7th grade, 6th or 7th, 8th grade students who had been in basic and what they tracked and where they got to test score wise, we can't even compare that because IAR is different, iReady is different, and it's different students in a different cohort. So what I would think is, my hypothesis, if we were to test it, hopefully what we would see is because of the students in a more rigorous class with the RTI math interventions, they're doing more rigorous math on a regular basis. Therefore, as they take the iReady test and the IAR test, they've accessed more information in a regular class rather than a basic class. Therefore, comparatively, they should do better than a class where they are in basic and getting less and slower paced instruction. Does that make sense?
It does.
Yeah.
I guess my question is
Yeah.
we made a change. How do we know that it worked? And I don't expect you to have an answer right this second. It's kind of an abstract question. There is no set equals Y in this, but there should be some sort of evaluation of we changed the way that we do things. Was it beneficial? And that's, I guess,
And what happens to the children that don't get to that point?
They don't catch up.
Yeah, that don't catch up.
But if you look ahead, look at the numbers, that second level ones is pretty high.
what are you looking at, Pedro?
At the bottom line on 6th graders, 7th graders, and yes, they're different individuals. I get it. So I was one that fought from not getting rid of this first grade
year.
level. Yeah, because of this and not having a child separated from the rest during the RTI programs. We talk about social and emotional and everything as potentially labeling these students. It just puzzles me.
Well, I can't agree with you on there. RTI has gotten to be pretty common practice in schools. The kids don't think twice about it, in my opinion. But I still go back to the big picture of we made a change. How do we evaluate whether or not it was the right change or a good change?
Great. Addressing a couple of those things from the SEL perspective, research shows that the negative impact that lower tier tracking has on a student is pretty impactful. So when we can mainstream them and they can work with their peers in a class, the social emotional impact that has increases. As far as how significant of a change, when we look at 14 of 19 making growth, that's a huge celebration. When we look at 7th grade, it's 20 of 24 are closing that gap. Would they close that gap if they still had the basic math course? I don't know if I could answer that for you, but I do know that the gains that we're seeing in these kids in particular, and then the grades that we see as a 6th grade and a 7th, 8th grade cohort all together, so looking at those composite scores through iReady of all of these kids in our math program, the number of students that were at the tier 3, so the students in need of most intervention, and then tier 2 are those that are a step below that. Those numbers have drastically decreased over the last couple of years. So would it have the same impact? I can't give that answer now, but I do know that it is having a significant impact on our students as they're in a mainstream math class.
Are students getting, struggling if they need two RTI interventions, being like in English, a language arts, and a math? Is that still a struggle to get kids both services somehow?
Yep, for sure, and it's something that we see at all grade levels, and usually what you will see is that the student is receiving a reading intervention first, and then once they exit that, or if they can work it into their individual schedule, they'll receive that math intervention as well. But there's a struggle there, just scheduling wise, time wise in a day, how to get both interventions.
It seems like a lot of the 19 identified here are getting RTI. I felt like a year ago when we talked, that was less. So I don't know if they don't have an ELA need, or if the ELA need is maybe not totally gone, but less. I just didn't know if math is getting a higher priority, or if they're both still, it's a struggle to try to get both of those needs met.
I've been having a recent conversation with Mr. Faulkner on this very topic. One of the things he talked about was, in the past, it would always be English first, but one of the things they're looking at is more individualized with each student to see how disparate their math and English scores are off of what the norm is. So in some instances, when it's much more discrepant in math than English, they will go the math route as opposed to English. So they're trying to balance it and make it different for each student. So it used to be almost always English in the past, and now they're trying to make it much more individualized.
Is the RTI intervention teacher-assisted or online /computer-based?
It's a teacher. There's a teacher in there.
The student itself, is the teacher helping them, and she's just there to supervise, if you will? They're on the computer doing the assistance.
There's a little bit of a technical program to it, but the teacher is instructing them and helping. It's not just a supervisory period. It is someone that is teaching them. Looking at 7th and 8th grade, again, 20 of the 24 students that had met that criteria for math have made gains on that iReady assessment. 3 remained at level. 1 decreased a level on that iReady test. 1 of the 24 is in RTI, which is, again, a celebration in itself. A lot of students are having their individual needs met in the classroom. 11 have been dismissed. So 11 that had previously qualified have been dismissed from RTI services. And again, that base level for the IAR, looking at the levels 1, 2, and 3 for those students that are in 7th grade. 8th grade was the last year that the students maintained in that course through the duration of the year, and that was the 17-18 school year. And looking at those 18, decided to pull data on 6 students. The other 12 are either currently having their academic needs serviced through an individualized education plan or a case study. So as they progressed through, there is an identified specific need for some customized, tailored, individualized instruction. So looking at that, of those 6 that do not have that IEP, 3 of the 6 again increased, 1 remained on level, 2 dropped a level. 4 of the 6 did not qualify, and then you see the levels for the IAR there.
I'm sorry, what's the definition of being dismissed? Meaning they're above the 3 level?
Yep, look at the criteria that they used. It was a little bit different prior to iReady. It was teacher recommendation, iReady scores, math scores, but if they've dismissed, there was not that large of a gap between the grade level expectations and what their performance were. So if they were dismissed, they either had they qualified in the past, and then they closed that gap enough so they didn't need those services. Some of them didn't qualify for it at all based on their scores.
So they tested out.
Correct.
So it's a good thing.
Yes.
Okay, because
Yep.
sometimes dismissed can,
Yes.
so let's change it
Yep.
to they did awesome, something like that.
Yes.
Okay.
Graduated. That's-
Yeah, exactly.
And again, just kind of a brief summary of that, we do have a significant number of students that are closing those gaps, that are seeing success in the math class. Again, using iReady, it's a rigorous test. It is nationally normed. It's adaptive to student needs, so it's tailored to the individual student taking those. IAR, hopefully we have some increased numbers after this spring's administration. And then on top of all of that, this is the year that we're reviewing our math curriculum. So we've had a team of 6th, 7th, and 8th grade teacher, instructional coach looking at what we're instructing, how we're instructing, the resources that we're using through the lens of personalized learning. So there's a lot currently that's happening in the realm of math to make sure that we're addressing the needs of our students. Other questions on the course book?
I have another question.
Yes.
I brought this one up a few times. I've asked why we do not allow 8th grade students to take Spanish 1A as an option during their 8th grade year to see if they like it.
Yep, and the reason behind that is that Spanish class.
Can you just give reference for the rest of the board if they don't know the difference between 1A, 1B?
Okay, so
Yeah.
when kids come in and start somewhere during their 5th grade year, they have to sign up for Spanish if they want to take it, and they're required to take 7th and 8th grade as they sign up for that.
Yep.
And go ahead, I'm sorry.
Sure. So Spanish is a unique exploratory class for our students here because it is the high school curriculum. So it is the Spanish 1 course that is broken into a Spanish 1A, is essentially the first semester of high school Spanish 1, and that's taking 7th grade year, and then Spanish 1B is taken 8th grade year. And the reason in looking at that, number one, the course periods are a little bit different here. So if you break it down by minute and by hour, the students here would have contact time of about 19 days less than what they have at the high school based on a 50-minute period at the high school, 45-minute period at the middle school. So it's broken down for that reason. It's broken down just developmentally, exposing kids to a new language. The course expectations being tied to a high school course. They take 1A is a 7th grade Spanish class, and then 1B is the 8th grade. So when they're done, they will have taken the entire high school Spanish 1 course. The tricky part behind that, to answer that question of why an 8th grader can't take a Spanish 1A, those courses happen during exploratory time, and it ends up being a scheduling issue. So when the entire 6th grade is at exploratory classes, 7th and 8th grade are receiving core instruction or lunch out in the building. So with the middle school philosophy, those grade levels travel by team. So then the entire 7th grade is split up in their exploratories, then 8th grade. So if an 8th grader wanted to take Spanish 1A, they would be removed from a core content class to go and take that class during the exploratory time. And then they would just need to figure out in that schedule how to make up whatever core content they were pulled from.
So it's possible.
Yes, anything is possible, yes. It is.
If you don't want to take English, it's yeah.
No,
The-
honestly, I was confused by your answer. So is it possible that it can be done, or is it too much of a bureaucratic nightmare?
It's a bit of a nightmare, but if you were to give me guidance that it has to be done, it can be done. What happens is that when that student, if I'm an 8th grader and I go into Spanish 1A, I have to find a very particular time in my schedule to get my ELA instruction or science instruction, and based on the teacher availability, supervisory, things like that, that trickle down is very difficult to schedule through.
So I guess I'm weighing the scheduling bureaucracy part of it versus giving the kids the opportunity to explore learning a foreign language.
Yep.
I think one other component would be the bureaucracy and the challenge of scheduling it. Then the other piece would be with middle school having the team concept. If the schedule changes such that they're leaving an English class to go there, they may end up not always being on their same team throughout. And part of the middle school concept is to keep the students on the same team so all 4 or 5 teachers know them. But to make a schedule like that work, there's the possible potential that they leave red to go to blue or different parts, and then you kind of lose some of that. So it could happen. They would get that opportunity for Spanish 1 for 7th grade as an 8th grader, but you'd have to do the cost-benefit analysis of what their schedule would look like. So I think the key would be trying to look to see what their schedule would look like to the best extent possible, and then weigh it versus getting that opportunity.
So we're back to a cost benefit of whether it's worth it or not. I'm
For-
not trying to be sarcastic.
No,
mean,
I
it's-
don't know about cost or if it's just like the family. The family would have to look at that schedule, knowing that their student is now potentially not fully part of a certain team, as opposed to maybe being kind of juggled around, not being with all of their same peers in the same class. So it's,
See, putting my parent hat on, that wouldn't bother me.
yep.
And
So,
I think that might be the better option and have not thoroughly laid out what the process would look like, but based on how 1A and 1B are broken up, a better option that would be able to maintain that eighth grade exploratory, that team middle school concept, would be for that eighth grade student that's looking just for initial exposure to enter into, to waive the prerequisite of 1A and enter into 1B as an eighth grader. It would need to be on an individual level. It would need to have conversations with parents, because there's going to be a little bit of a gap there of what they missed in 1A. But in talking with Mr. Faulkner and looking at what that course description is, it would be doable, but it would be a heavy workload for that student. So not necessarily the disruption of their schedule to put them into 1A, but they could still be exposed to the Spanish language in 1B and still take that during that eighth grade exploratory block.
all right, I'm not an educator. I don't know what the right answer is, and whether you put them in A or B, because either way, they're going to go to high school and probably take Spanish 1. So where the benefit is, I don't know what the right answer is. I still am of the opinion that they should have the option to be exposed to Spanish and not have to do 7th and 8th grade. So if they want to take it as an 8th grade, or I think that option should be available to them, but that would require changes in the course book, which is why I brought it up tonight.
Correct. And I think for looking into the future, I think we would need to redefine what our Spanish offering is, because now it's directly tied to the high school course content, that Spanish 1. There are some middle schools and programs that offer more of like survey courses that are quarterly. They rotate through 4 different languages, and it's truly a superficial exposure to those languages. When we, from my understanding, when this originally, and we're talking 6-7 years ago, I think the intent was to be able to have that high school course taught here at the middle school.
And I don't think we have the resources or the options to do true survey.
Yep.
Right.
Kids are now taking 7th and 8th grade Spanish, then going to high school and taking Spanish 1 all over again. So
Correct.
I don't see why we can not, or maybe start over. I believe we should give them the option to be exposed to it for only 1 year, because they're going to end up taking it again as freshmen. So I guess that's what I want to happen, but I'm one person, this is a board, there's a whole process.
How many students do you actually get in the 7th grade that take the Spanish class?
I want to say a couple hundred. There were 3 Spanish teachers. They all have full course loads. I can get you the exact number. It's
And what about the 8th grade? Or is
Same,
it
very-
combined?
very high. They don't combine the 7th and 8th grade class, but they're nearly, if not full.
Okay.
About the same amount of sections.
Yep.
I'd be more curious to know how many of those that do 7th and 8th then repeat and do Spanish 1?
Yep.
Or are they all going to Spanish 2?
There is a number that repeats Spanish 1.
You got a guess? Is it half, 3/4, 10%? A guess, I'm not holding it at
I guess I'd say less than half.
less than half.
Yep.
Yeah, and I think there's, like, some of it might be not as confident in the material. Maybe they want to repeat Spanish 1. I think some of it might be students who are trying to fulfill a college requirement that maybe wants 2, 3, or 4 years, and they don't want to, if you start at 2 in the high school, you've got to get that much further to meet
Right.
the 3-year requirement.
And then they're probably the grade.
And so some of them want to
Potentially.
repeat, even if they know the content. If that's at all what your thinking was, like, oh, I wonder how many didn't master it, they still could have mastered it and
Yep.
take Spanish 1.
There's all of those components of now it's a grade point average. Now, yep.
Yeah. Has there been, if I remember correctly, it's still not offered as high school credit. Has there been more discussion on that, the middle school experience?
Yep, discussion for sure, and
Yeah.
looking at when it was by guidance of the board, again, 5 or 6 years ago, their direction was if we look at Spanish, then we need to look at Spanish, algebra, geometry, and that has a far greater impact financially, staffing-wise, hiring, for those that have so 2 options on policy is, number 1, students can come to the high school to take those classes, which is very disruptive to their learning environment, or a teacher here with a high school certification can teach that class. So we would just need to make sure that we have proper certifications. But again, that's further reaching than just a Spanish class. We would need to look at all of the courses here that potentially have our credit bearing for the high school. And then there's a board policy, I believe it's 6-300, is talking about graduation requirements. And much bigger picture, there's some things we need to look at as far as having 7 semesters in order to graduate. If I can get a lot of credits during the middle school, my graduation date might be bumped. So much larger picture, but yes, there's definitely discussion.
And I can see the equity in that, of why you would want to do that. It seems like foreign language has a different, because of the view, I think, of some people trying to get some material done to satisfy a requirement and then have other options in their schedule, where I don't know that you swap out math the same way that sometimes people swap out some of the other things, that it seems like it could help at some colleges. Some colleges have gotten, I think, more lenient in what they're looking for, but a broader definition of what they accept, so that solves it as well.
For sure, and sometimes they don't necessarily look at the courses and when they were taken, but if my final transcript says I have Spanish too, then
so it might be a bit of a moot point, but that was more what I was curious. But I've totally digressed from you, Ryan. Is there something you want tonight with the course book?
I don't know how we move forward. I expressed what I want. I want 8th graders to be able to take Spanish, a Spanish class. I would think you'd want to start at the beginning, but you know better than I. But the agenda item is a non-voting item, so I don't know how we move forward from here.
Patrick, with the conversation that is already underway with what our second foreign language or world language of the high school will be, I know that committee is met and is discussing that. Is there a way to incorporate some of this conversation with that to maybe bring back a more wide-ranging opportunity, or ideas or thoughts or recommendations?
Yep, I think there's an opportunity to discuss it further with those that are more deeply involved. But again, it would likely come in a course proposal this time next year for the future year, if we're looking at moving away from Spanish 1 to a Spanish class.
I guess I don't understand. It's still the same class, it's just who you let in it. Why do we have to do a whole big to-do? It's, you let the kids in or you don't.
Okay. Yeah, I heard exposure to a Spanish class as more of like that survey style, but if we're looking.
I don't mean a survey style.
Okay.
I mean they take Spanish 1A.
Spanish 1A.
So does anyone else have any thoughts with the Spanish that they want to
could you give me I know this is before you, when this was introduced, but I know you're savvy to it. So so the idea is, and I'm coming back to the credits. The idea was that was presented to us to introduce Spanish at the middle school, and then jumping up to the senior level, that would be a potential option for them to get even deeper into it, or to go get another course that they might have, because they met their 4-year Spanish, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
So my numbers don't add up unless a student takes the leap as a freshman and goes into the second level, right? But then if you go 9, 10, 11, that's only 3 years. So I'm missing a number somewhere. Unless they go to the 12th grade. and then they do all 4 at that moment. But going back to your question, I thought there was a form of credit that they potentially will be getting, and I'm hearing that.
Correct.
They would potentially have to repeat, well, their choice.
Right.
To jump at the 9th grade level to the second
Yep.
version.
So it has not been our practice for middle schoolers to earn high school credit. And researching that historically, it was because when it was proposed, it was, no, we don't want to offer that. We would need to look at our philosophy on offering high school credit for any course that comes, any high school credit-bearing course at the middle school. So from my understanding, and I can certainly dig deeper, but from my understanding, that was the direction when this came 6-7 years ago. As far as opportunities for courses, if I don't take any Spanish at the middle school, I can still go 1, 2, 3, 4 AP. I can still do that while I'm in high school without having anything at the middle school.
So it doesn't help a student, in a sense, to do Spanish at the middle school then?
It helps them in the sense that it could free up. So if I wanted to take 4 years, and I knew that was the path I wanted to take, I could do middle school and then freshman, sophomore, junior, and then it would free up some elective classes for me my last year. Maybe not in foreign languages, but it would allow me a little bit more choice in my course selection.
So, but that student would have had selected to go into Spanish 2 as a freshman.
Yes.
If I remember correctly, and I might not, that AP is Spanish 5, so you go freshman year is 2, 3, 4, 5. I think there still is offered a 3-4 that you might, if you're an accelerated student, start in Spanish 1 and do Spanish 2 and then 3-4 junior year and still be able to get to AP senior year. But if you don't take it in middle school to get to AP, you have to do extra work in high school.
Yes.
I think, if that's still true.
That's correct.
Yeah. So it would make it easier on you.
So 2 questions. Ryan asked you one way, I'm going to ask you another way. How many students do jump up to the second level?
To Spanish 2?
They skip.
Start at Spanish 2.
Spanish 2.
I would be comfortable saying the majority, but I can get concrete numbers for you.
And then the other question on the top side, how many students are taking advantage of that in that last hooray hurrah class, the one that's more in that at the senior level?
The AP.
The AP
AP.
level, again, I can give you concrete numbers. I believe those numbers were in the 20s. In the AP class, yep.
So how do we move forward?
So how do we move forward? So,
Well, I think Patrick mentioned it, Mr. Raleigh mentioned at the beginning, if there is a specific instance in which a family wants that course option or that opportunity, the policy would now allow it with some ramifications of scheduling. So an instance, if that was you, Mr. Carey, or one specific other person, it's something the middle school could look at and could potentially make happen. So there is the availability to do it, but I think on a larger scale would take a little more work to look at it based on what that might do to scheduling if it's more than just one person or 2 people.
I don't think your average parent is going to open up the course book and see Spanish is 7th and 8th grade and say, oh, wait, I should go ask the administration if I can change a case for my kid. I think you're expecting too much.
I have another question. This
Maybe.
is kind of out there. Do we allow 7th and 8th grade students to take Spanish not here, but say somewhere else in the vicinity? And however they, grade out wherever they're taking it, is it able to come back and be a part of your coursework here?
You're talking about a harder student going somewhere else to take Spanish?
Right. And then will those course grades and things come back too harder? Can they?
If they're here, they would take our classes. I don't know any instances of.
I don't know.
If they transfer in, they could transfer into Spanish or 1B. So,
Okay.
so they could go into the second half if they transfer in with some experience somewhere else. That way they would be able to
But
get
that would
around
be from
the
another
prereq.
school district
Yeah.
into this one, but if you
You're
just want
saying like
some,
if somebody went to a Bonzi, took Spanish,
Yeah.
came back, whether they get credit
would
or
that
not or
credit
not?
be, would that credit move over?
Do you know of any of our 7th, 6th, 7th, or 7th, 8th graders?
I don't
going-
know of any
I don't-
instances where
I
that
don't
has
either. I
happened.
just
They
And
have, they probably couldn't
Way
even
out there,
enroll as a middle
questions.
schooler, correct?
I didn't know if
Yeah.
it would,
No.
it would come back.
I don't,
So I guess, does the majority of people want the course book to come back differently? Is that where we want to go next, or is this just food for thought?
If it's just me, I'll shut up and we can move on.
I mean, you know, as you said, one board member, one parent, but I would be curious for the committee to say like, what if we talked about this?
Yep.
And then give
Yeah.
some recommendations back, like, we don't think this is a good idea, it is something to explore.
For sure.
You all know your curriculum and students way better than we do.
Would you like that information prior to approving this year's course book? Or would you like that, because I know we're going to give out that foreign language survey and do a little bit more investigating and coming back a little bit later than what that timeline had outlined? What would be the appropriate time for that information?
I mean, I personally don't think it, I think it would be pushing you all to do things fast and not well if we asked you to bring it back. That's me.
I'd say the same, but
I agree, it should be part of that, the world languages or foreign languages review and then bring it
Right.
back because of the fact that this needs to be finalized so that students can start selecting courses.
Yep.
Right.
But when's the world language review cycle?
Well, the cycle is done, but that committee's meeting and to figure out what the second world language is going to be, and then they can include this as part of that.
So we're talking another year or so?
The spring, so at this time next year, if there's an option, while it's not going to be the upcoming year, it would be next year for the following school year. So it's 1 year.
but when would you come back with that information?
In
Before
the spring.
In the spring.
This
But
coming
before
spring.
the high school course book, right? Is that when you're planning on coming back with
Yes.
the committee?
Yes.
So that's,
Okay.
Do you have a timeline for that? Was it April, May?
April, yep.
April?
Yep.
Okay. It's April, so it's the spring before high school for next year.
Okay.
wait, I'm
I
confused.
have frustration that I've been asking this question for years, and now we're kicking the can another year down the road.
So we're talking about coming back for foreign language in a year from now, so it's not for next year registration, it's for the year after registration.
I don't find that acceptable to be.
Is that what
school
we're all
years
saying?
away.
Yeah, because right now, for next year, it'd have to be done in the next couple of weeks, the middle school course.
No, but I mean, so they've registered for next year. You're not
Right.
even trying to hit next year's registration, because next year's registration is January.
No, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Next year's registration, next year's course updated for next fall, so that next year's registration.
So
not the
you'll be
current
back
year.
in the fall,
Yes.
So
not
we're
April.
A year and a half away.
What?
When does the high school course book? That's,
That's the fall.
yeah.
That's in
Okay.
November, December, because students start their course selection late December, January.
So are we talking November, December? Or are we talking April? Or do you guys need to get back?
But April is for the committee to meet, correct?
This
Correct.
April?
Yes, right
Yeah.
now. It's right now.
Yeah.
2 months
Yeah,
from now.
But
Yes.
come back to the board in the fall.
Yes,
Yes.
So
For
this
the
is for
following
next
year.
year.
Yeah.
yes.
Yes.
Correct.
For next year.
Yep.
Okay, we ready to move on?
Where did we land? And
They're coming back in the fall, but you can, and,
I
Is it
don't
conceivable?
like that answer.
yeah.
Is it conceivable to put it or add another subject matter, if you will, during the discussion of the world language sessions that are happening? What sounds to be pretty soon?
To add
To add the discussion. of
discussion from
this.
tonight
Yeah.
to that, yes, they would.
Yep. I think that would be the plan, but if we come back in February and the course book is approved as it is, the 6th and 7th graders are going to start registering in like February 11th-ish, and then the incoming 6th graders in April. So they'll miss that opportunity. Depending on what comes of those discussions, if there needs to be language involved in, an 8th grader can have the opportunity in outlining what that process would look like, what the scheduling would look like. I imagine there could be some amendments made, but it would be past this approval. We're looking for it for next meeting, so it wouldn't be till April.
So I think Megan and I were fine with coming back in the fall. Ryan wants it sooner. What about you guys?
I guess I'm good with fall.
There's your majority. So, thank you, but we'll keep going.
We'll
Okay.
keep working at it.
So are we,
Thank you, Mr. Rowley.
Thank you.
good? Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Okay, we'll move to J3, approval of policies from press, first reading.
Yes, as you know, tried to give, especially for the longer updates such as this one, try to give you some information prior to the meeting because they are extensive. And just a quick review, we get it quarterly, cabinet reviews by department, all of the proposed changes, statutes. There are some that just have the general okay that you'll see there are no options or questions to.
I'm sorry. I know we said move on, but I still, so what's happening?
Yep.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. So you're going to go to committee and you're going to do it, you're going to come back and make a recommendation in the fall, is that what's happening? Do I understand?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. Do I have to start my press policy update all over again?
No, Ryan, we're now muting Ryan.
You got that on video, right? So you can go back and watch the beginning part of that? Okay, thank you. And then, as you know, the ones that just say okay, generally, those are legal updates, state code updates, or statute updates. Those that have recommendations or requirements, I put in the weekly update, and there are a number of those based on recommendations from a school attorney, recommendations from best practice, and so to proceed moving forward, because there are a number of them, do you want to start with questions that you may have had reviewing those, or do you want to go not policy by policy, because there's about 30 of them, but if you want me to go to the ones that have options, which are about 10, I can do those, or I can just answer those that you had questions on, or those that you felt needed more discussion or more information on before you want to move on approve and first reading.
I don't have questions. Does anyone else have
I
specific
don't.
questions?
No, but obviously some of these are being pushed on us, right? So we don't have a choice.
The majority of them are being pushed on us by
Okay.
the state based on code and statutes. Those that we have options on are the ones that are highlighted in the weekly update.
I'd rather go over those
Go
because
with
the
those.
rest of them are just they're
you
pushed
good
on
with
us,
that,
like I
Alan?
said.
Right.
Go
It's
over the
that-
ones with options?
Exactly.
Okay.
So the first one you will find is page, you have page numbers on the bottom, correct?
Yep.
Yeah.
Page 4.
Awesome. Oh, never mind. Take it back.
Yes, keep going. 490.
Oh.
2105.
Okay.
Policy
3, 11, and 4. All right, cool. I found 4.
Right here. Yeah, go 11, 90, and 4, 90.
They're out of order. That's okay, we found 4.
Yeah. 11, 4, got it.
Okay, so on this one, if there is a board member accusation of another board member of wrongdoing or misdeeds, for both of these two, 2105 and 210, our recommendation is that the board president would be the one who would initiate the investigation, not the superintendent. And so based on Maureen and based on the fact that the superintendent works with all board members and to choose when there may or may not be information to investigate, that would be something the information could go to the board president, and then the board president could authorize it, and then again, as a superintendent, I would assist in any way possible. So the recommendation is for the board president to authorize any investigation that needs to take place. Good? All right, the next one is policy 4150, which I believe is page 22 of 90. Facility management and building
What are the
programs.
numbers up
Ours
top?
are off. Ours are off.
They're
Yeah.
not the same?
They're not in order.
No,
They're
not
all
It is
over
page
the place.
22, but it's not the 22nd page.
22, I found it. It's in the middle. It's in the middle
We're
somewhere.
good.
So the $25,000, the recommendation under the cost to exceed, rather than being $12,500 as stated in the policy, make that recommendation $25,000 because $25,000 matches practice and Illinois bidding laws.
Okay,
We always have the option of,
they're just not in order.
we're talking about bidding laws, right?
Yes.
I can't find them.
Yep.
We always have the option of requesting bid anyway, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Anything under 25,000, we typically get, if it's above this 12,500, above 10,000, somewhere in that range, we'll usually get at least 3 quotes or proposals, but not necessarily go out to bid.
That's weird.
That's fine.
It's weird.
Yeah, because
But you can still
there
go
are
by the numbers.
procurement laws
There
that we
is.
have to do that.
Pages are kind of.
Yeah, I apologize. I don't know how the pages got.
29?
Okay.
Huh? 22.
Are the policies in order?
I think the policies are in order.
Okay, so numerically,
So
I'll
go by
I'll
the
go by
4-1
policies, I
tag.
don't even go by numbers. So the
Okay.
next one is
Meg's
5.
laughing on her laptop going, whatever, I'm
Just
fine.
give us both. I'll find the better.
Okay,
Give us
5:30.
Give us the number on the bottom.
5:30 is the next policy, hiring, process and criteria.
What page?
43.
43.
You can go by the numbers up top are in order if you find the 530.
Got it.
There it is.
She just found 22, by the way.
What number are we going to now?
It's further back.
Got it.
Now you're fine. Right
Getting
through.
close.
Are you
We need a new printer that sorts
ready?
better.
Yes, we
Right before page 71.
we did talk about that.
Oh, boy.
Julianne, do you want to,
Here's 44.
Awesome.
We got it.
Got it.
is everybody,
Yes.
page 43?
Yep.
Let me review it quickly. Oh, this one is for hiring practices. There's a new law that as part of the hiring practice, you can't, if somebody chooses not to put their previous salary on the application, you can't ask them their salary. But what you can do is, you can go on the internet, or if you can find it somewhere, you can use it that way. But to maintain confidentiality and maintain consistency, our recommendation is no, we don't want the right to do that, and we don't want to go and do that. Because we want to make sure that there's not a misstep somewhere looking when they shouldn't be.
You don't want to cyberstalk people.
Nope. Nope. If the law says we shouldn't be doing it, we don't want to do it.
So is that something that's typical?
It's a new law. Before, you used to ask that question, how much are you making? And then what happened was there were people asking that question, and then they would find out what that number is. And even though our latitude was X, if I knew you were making X minus, I wouldn't go all the way to that. I'd go at some number in the middle.
In between.
That's
Because,
that's
I
not
mean-
just education, that's
Yeah,
everything.
that's
Because-
everywhere, and that's
but
why they
For
did that.
education, I mean, I know we publish it like a year behind or something like that.
Right.
I mean, it's easy to find from
Right.
your arena, if you will.
Right. And the other good thing with schools, most of our positions are contractual positions, and so that we're obligated to generally hire or pay based on their experience or what pay grade they fall in.
Right, so
don't
we have a
as much.
system to kind of analyze
Yeah,
that
we do.
anyway, right? All right,
Yes, we do.
All right.
Next one is 550,
Page.
Next page.
Next page.
71.
The next page.
I can't believe those are numbers.
You know what?
You were so excited to say they were
Those
numbered.
page numbers match that order that they sent it to us.
That they sent it in the wrong order.
Which was out of order for
Yes.
us. So we put them in policy order, but now I bet the page.
Right.
Just let us make fun of Todd.
Seriously,
correct.
it was driving us crazy trying to communicate with each other.
All right, cool.
I just want everybody to know that I can count to 100. From 1 to 100, I've got those numbers down, I'm good with those. So I want that on record. So 550 is drug and alcohol-free workplace. The first one, there's a recommendation of the language for on-call, to use the term on-call in there. But since we don't have on-call type positions, and we wouldn't want the term on-call to limit any of our consequences or possible discipline, our recommendation for number 1 is no. We don't want the language of on-call as part of the language,
Okay.
okay? Then number 2,
72.
yep,
No,
Is that
well,
right?
right there.
Get 70. this
yes,
one? Yeah.
yes. Then the second one, the vaping language, we are recommending the default sentence. That is more inclusive, and it covers more of the possible vaping type of infractions that we have seen that we want to make sure that we have covered.
Okay.
Next one, 5-3-30, sick days, vacation days, holidays, and leaves,
5-3-30.
which is page 59 of 90.
5-3-30?
5-3-30,
Keep
yes.
going, Gail.
Keep going
Keep
through your
going.
90.
About 10 more pages. Got it.
Keep going, I'll catch you.
Actually, before page 60.
Yep.
It's there. Yep.
Yep.
Seems like it kind of makes
There you go.
sense after that.
You got that, Gail?
Yep, got it.
Thank you. The language that we have written in clarifies beginning of year 11 through 15.
Yeah.
And then we have an additional, in our handbook, an additional section, the year 16 to end of career, that's in our handbook also. So we want to update this to match our handbooks.
Okay.
Next one is 660 curriculum content, or 63 of 90.
Keep going.
First, go ahead.
660?
64 of 90, 660, yes.
Thank you.
Yep, first one, do we want to include a mandatory section or a mandatory topic in grades 9 through 12 to talk with our students about proper behavior and reporting of sexual harassment in the workplace? Our recommendation on that one is no, we don't want to. We have currently enough mandates from the state. While we believe this is an important topic, we include it in a number of our CTE classes, we include it in our social emotional learning, and we include it as part of homerooms and assemblies. But as far as language, we don't want to be officially tied to this until we're ready and know where it would officially fall in our curriculum.
So,
Number one,
That's number one, so the answer is no.
okay.
so you're saying harassment in the workplace, meaning a student, this would allow a student to say so-and-so is harassing me?
No, it's preparation for when they are in the workplace so that they know how to respond when they're in the workplace. And also, as we can talk with them on that to prepare them now, but hopefully wherever they're getting employed, there's also the policies and procedures that they would have to go through to hiring so that they would know what their expectations are there.
This is workforce preparation next school day.
The second one, do we want to offer a class on hunting safety as part of the curriculum? At this point, no, we don't. Our curriculum guides are done, or handbooks are about done, and at this point, we don't want to add that mandate at this time.
You don't have to be specific on it.
The next one is page 81 of 90, and then 7-270.
What would you do for number 13, and 660, number 13?
660?
Yeah, third one you're on, third one, number 13 is, it's actually on page 64. So I guess I'm not,
Are you on the bottom of the second page?
it works out to be the top of the second page. It's section 660, item number 14. I'm 13, number 13.
Right here. 64, top.
All schools must be taught, including principals of representative government, for D, C, as a whole list of.
All of those that we're required to do, we will. So the 1 through 20 that we have to do as part of regular curriculum updates, the ROE, Regional Office of Education, requires us to update those. So when they're up there without options, we have to do them. The ones at the bottom, the related questions or options, are the ones where we have some feedback. So if it's 1 through 20, we have to do those.
And the first one is related to question 10, or the bullet 10. The second one is to number 20. Those
So
two questions that we just answered?
Yeah.
So number 20, if we want to add on,
Right.
that would add on after we were teaching them bike riding and walking safety.
I'm looking at press 3 and press 4, updated response, oh, yes, that's just a code that's required to do.
Yes.
Sorry.
Yeah, those are just comments.
Okay, it's just basically pointing out the change in
Yep, all the other ones.
the,
The next one, policy 7270, administering medicines to students, which is 81.
sorry, what was 81?
Yes.
Thank you.
It's policy 7270, administering medicines to students. This, we are, yes, as a default, to provide the glucagon, but with the caveat of the safeguards built in that you'll see with the sentence that Maureen has recommended up at the top of 83 of 90, which again, for all of them, they're pretty much the same, whether it's the different options of asthma, epinephrine, the opioid, or the glucagon. We are in favor of having those and getting our nurses trained or administrators trained so that they can apply them, but it's providing that we can get the medication, we have it on hand, and there's authorized personnel to use it. So we're 100% in favor, but we want to make sure that we safeguard our staff and students so that only the proper people are using the proper medicines.
And we are having troubles getting supplies right now.
Yep.
A couple questions, just broad questions on this one, because I can't sleep at night, turn on bad TV, and you see like the TV shows where they're using Narcan.
Mhm.
Is that allowable for our administration, or it's a drug to prevent overdoses or counteract overdoses? So are we allowed to administer that? Does our deputy?
I think
our high school deputy have that with them?
the high school deputy does, but in the middle school, we would contact Sugar Grove PD.
I guess, from what I understand, and by no means am I educated, the faster you get that, the better it is in terms
Yep.
of counteracting the reaction. So is that something that we want to consider the nurses to have?
Yep, I will look at that. Necessary training. Because like Julian, like Dr. Fuchs just said a second ago, at the high school, our head nurse is, Mrs. Geese is trying to make sure we have all of these. Some of them that we used to get local prescriptions from scripts through our local doctor, we're not able to get it as much as possible. So where and when we can have these, we will. So if we
but
can do
would we
Narcan,
change anything in this policy in order, we're fine with,
yes.
okay.
This will allow us to have any of these. If we can get them and have a trained personnel on staff, we will utilize it. So the question for the, I think you're asking me, is what would happen at the middle school?
I guess
Yep.
I would suggest that we have the middle school medical staff trained in the use of that drug.
Narcan, okay. Thank you.
Now, I'm presuming that, like, the fire department, paramedics would have that
Yes.
available.
Timing.
But like Mr. Carey
Yes,
said,
timing.
depends on how fast they can
get
get here
there.
and utilize it. The last one is policy 830, visitors to and conduct on school grounds, 85. That question is, the last page, the recommendation is no on that. What it is, do we want meetings removed from the sentence that says we can prohibit those that have used bad behavior on our campus, activities and meetings, or just activities? So we want it to be more inclusive so that if there are people that are inappropriate at meetings, that we can also prohibit them from coming to meetings. So it'd be activities, athletics, and meetings. We just like it because it's more broad and it covers the district in most circumstances.
This is banning parents.
Yes.
Okay.
To see,
Anyone, right, not just parents?
yes, could be anybody, correct.
So you want it across the board? Or no?
In what way?
Well, you mentioned the meetings, activities. and
Saying
whatever.
no actually adds more, is that what you're saying?
Yes, yes, by saying, because no, yes would cut out meetings, so we want no, so it includes meetings, which
Okay.
a lot of things are called meetings, so that would pretty much cover
So
everything.
that would exclude a person that misbehaves at a sports event into the meetings as well? I'm asking-
We can, yes, we can, this, the way it's noted now, can exclude anybody from activities
But is it
and
like-
athletics and meetings.
Is it blanket across everything else, though?
So if you got a bad parent at a football game that calls a rough, nasty names, can you still go to PTA meeting, or is it across the board once you?
Good question. It covers all of those things, but it would be case by case based on the behavior. So it could, yes.
But there's the discretion, you have the discretion of saying, no more football games, but you can still come to the PTO meeting?
Yes, this allows us to be able to do that. Because there are some,
I think that's what you were.
yes, because there have been
That's
people
what I
that
was
have.
saying. I'd hate to, I say, hey, you must behave over
Yes.
here, so you're not coming to our meetings.
Nothing.
And then hate for that to,
Right. It's case by case and discretionary, for sure.
Could get there, but,
Some people are more passionate about certain topics than others.
yeah.
yes, we are.
We do need action to approve on first reading, and we'll come back and I'll look into the opioid-related question that Mr. Carey had, excuse me, that Mr. Carey had.
So I will move that the Board of Education approve the recommended policy changes for the press on first reading.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
And a roll call?
Mrs. Pavlik.
Aye.
Mr. Rivas.
Aye.
Mrs. Barber.
Aye.
Mrs. Jung. Mr. Carey.
Motion carries 5-0. We'll move on to the superintendent and board report.
Last Thursday, CAC met. I think we had 12 or 13 CAC members that attended. We used that meeting to, one, to guide special education feedback and discipline handbook feedback. We've got some good feedback from parents. We're able to take that and make some of those changes as they apply. We also, Dr. Fuchs shared a little bit about the capital projects and any safety updates that we have in the district. And then the last piece we covered, some feedback on the same survey that we gave our community for Keeneland Connects, our next strategic plan. So we covered those topics, and they had some more feedback for us on those. This Wednesday night, in 2 nights here, starting at 5:30, we have our Keeneland Connects strategic plan meeting. It's our first of 3 meetings. We have a committee of about 34 or 35, including students, parents, teachers, administrators, community members, business owners, people from the college and university level, to continue our conversation on our strategic plan. Lastly, next week on the 4th, we have our winter or our third quarter foundation meeting, and Shauna represents the board at that one, and that meeting's from 7 o'clock to 8 o'clock in the district office. Any questions on those? Okay. Dr. Fuchs, I believe you have 2.
Yep. The first one is I just wanted to make sure everybody understood the solar information that I sent out in the Friday update. It's the update for the high school information. Aaron is here if we have any questions tonight, but our plan is to continue moving forward based on the board's approval back in September. The only thing is it's just changed slightly where we'll put it, and that has to do with the easement. So if you'll recall, there's an easement at the corner of Meredith and Kesslinger. You can see it on the drawing. So we can't put solar panels there. So instead, we've wrapped them around toward the, I guess I would call it the north end of the wetlands. We've checked with Jill Maris, the high school principal, Mark Payton, director of buildings and grounds, the architect. At this point, we don't believe that that land would be used for anything coming forth with the master facility plan. The only thing the architect said at that point would be parking. But if we needed to do more parking, it would probably be on the east side of the campus where more activities take place. So for the sake of solar, this drawing has 80% of what it was before, so the savings are slightly less. They're a little over 900,000 over 25 years instead of 1.5 million. So.
Did the engineering plan take into consideration sightlines for all of this? I presume they did, but just, it's getting close to where you turn out of the parking lot into.
Yep, there's required setbacks.
Yeah.
So we looked at that to make sure, and we believe it should be fine at this point.
Okay.
If it becomes an issue, maybe we'll have to deal with it at that time, but there are setbacks, like you said, required, and so we're hopeful that the visual will be okay. Yeah.
Based on the drawing, I'm just curious how far the fence is going to be off of Meredith Road, right at the north end of the array where that driveway comes in, roughly. Is there 20, 30 feet there?
Right here?
Yeah, so I'm looking at this array, wraps around, and there's just this narrow band
Yeah.
of grass. I'm just wondering how wide I know it's kind of hard to do.
Oh, I don't have it open.
Would you want to?
Yes, please. Thank you.
Yeah, so the setback requirement is 20 feet, and so right now, that's where we have it, just to maximize the amount of available space.
So you have the fence at 20 feet.
Correct, yep.
Got it.
Yep,
All right, so that's 20 feet off of the edge of the pavement,
correct, yep.
so that gives a car pulling out of that intersection 20 feet to
Sightlines.
sightlines.
Right, yep.
Can we cut the corner on that fence just a little bit? I mean, just instead of having a square corner, can you put a 45 on it just to include the sightline a little bit?
Yeah, I'm sure we can do that. Is it just in that northwest corner that you're concerned about?
I think the northeast
Yes.
corner would be
Okay,
good
I
too.
see what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's where you push
Yeah.
the children
We
to
can do
come
that.
out, right?
Yes, we do.
Yeah.
That's where,
At the end of the day.
yeah.
Yeah, they need all the help they can
I'm not
get.
the
No
hard-
offense to my kids.
So I guess my point would be, there's a lot of traffic there. Whatever you can do to optimize the sightlines
Sure.
of people leaving through that intersection would be
That's a big one.
appreciated.
Okay,
Yeah.
yep.
Anything else?
No, I'm fine with the rest of it. I just,
Thank you.
Yeah, we just need those sightlines to be good.
Then my second item for tonight then.
Thank you.
Aaron.
Aaron, thank you for all your work.
My second item for tonight is I've been working with Mr. Payton and the architect and Mrs. Maris on the high school master facility plan, and we're putting together a timeline, and the structure is such that there's a core planning committee. From that then, the architects will be meeting with various subgroups and different people, but we are looking for 2 board members to serve on the core planning committee.
what time is the subcommittee supposed to be?
Well,
How often?
yep, I believe that it's just for, in February, a 2-hour window, and then a monthly meeting until the plan is finished.
Which is a couple months.
Call it 6 just to be safe.
Are they
If it's
evening?
after hours, I can do it.
Yeah, after hours.
I would say so because we're gonna have community members, and so it would need to be after hours. And I'm planning to do a Google, not a Google,
Doodle.
doodle, thank you, a doodle to find the best dates for the most number of people.
And muscle cramp.
So I heard
I would like to.
So
Pedro
Pedro and Ryan,
and Ryan,
Yes.
you good? Good?
I
okay,
have health insurance,
You're
I'm
good?
set.
That sounds good.
all right, thank you both. I'll be in touch via a doodle once I get some other information on other people that'll be on the committee. So,
Thank you.
Would this have community members as well?
yes.
Are there any topics for future agendas?
I might have brought this up before, and it's a real big picture question that I kind of raised earlier today when we were talking about the math classes. When the district implements a new program of some sort, let's say they want to teach, we decide we're going to teach every kid in Chinese, and that's the program the district's going to roll out. Where are the measuring sticks of this was a dumb idea and we shouldn't have done this, or this, where, as a board member, how do I look at something and say, this is a good idea, or stop doing this? And I don't even know how to translate that into, because it's not one particular subject matter, it's big picture, we got rid of basic math and now we're gonna do the way that we're doing it now, and how do we review and analyze whether we should continue moving forward with something?
Are you talking broad or
Yeah,
curriculum?
No, I'm talking big, it's usually gonna be curriculum based, I guess, because
Okay.
That's what we do, but yeah.
So when do you take the pilot off of the,
Well,
whatever
I
it
guess
is?
that's
They
a-
call it pilot programs as part of my experience. Next thing you know, and I actually said, why don't you take the pilot program on them? Because once you put it in there, you're never going to take it out anyway.
Well,
But
I'm not gonna be that negative, I'm gonna say, at
I'm
some
being
point,
positive,
though,
I'm being
if
truthful.
you model a new something, whatever it is, when do we as a board say, that was a bad idea, stop doing that, or that was great, please implement it district-wide? And I guess my question is, I don't have.
So I guess for a topic for future then is what does the board want to hear back?
I think that the gauging portion of it, maybe each program that we get, there'll be a gauge to it,
Well,
right?
I don't know, because that could trickle down to some real minutia that I'm not sure that I want to get into. I'm literally big picture, like.
Well, more changes like that, we should be expecting some assessment reported back to say like, this is going well, it's not going well.
And I don't have the answer. I feel like we say go do something and maybe we hear about an update. And I'm not trying to be negative. I'm literally trying to look for some sort of review mechanism
A process that,
that we.
schedule.
Yeah.
So is that a topic for us to discuss to give more direction, or is that like a format that you would like when things come back, there to be a section to it that addresses and the board could weigh in if they're all in agreement?
I think that's an administration and board conversation of how we, because I don't know that, like this math program that we talked about earlier today, it might be great, it might not. I'm not in a position to say that, give it 2 years, and I think that's something the administration's gonna have to say, we wanna try this for X period of time, and then we're gonna tell you it's working, it's not, it's, like I said, I'm trying to be very big picture on when you make a change, we evaluated it, we think it worked, we didn't think,
It's kind of the plan, do, study, act. As you go through it, you plan it, you study it, you do it, and then at what point do you come back with some sort of an update of the success of it, and then why we're going to continue or what we change to try to.
To put a finer point on it, standard-based grading has been being implemented for 3 years now, if I think I'm right on that number. It's definitely worth a conversation as to whether it's working or not, or how did it go 3 years without, so.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's a good qualifying question, but I think it might be different based on what it is. Because if it's a state mandate and you have no choice but to do something, I think there might, and depending on what it is, there might be a different reporting mechanism than if it's something, a new class or a new program of study. So I think it's something we need to look at. Patrick, do you mind going up there for 1 second?
I didn't want to open that whole can of worms. It was just.
Well, I guess first of all, do 3 of the 5 board members want to know more about it?
I think so.
I think so.
I'm with.
Okay, that sounds like it.
Okay, so I just want to make sure that we didn't go too far down the road before we figured that out. So Patrick, as part of just quickly, as part of the curriculum renewal cycle, as part of when it's being looked at, the curriculum piece, is there also generally a component built in that will, based on if it's a new class, based on if it's a new textbook, a new assessment, those things, is that piece generally built into the curriculum renewal cycle?
Yep, and we, excuse me, we'll typically pilot new materials for a set amount of time before reconvening with that group to see what went well, what didn't go well, what changes do we need to make. As far as full-scale implementation, the tricky part with that is that most research says to see that quantifiable impact, it's like a 3 to 5 year implementation. And when we're looking at kids, that's hard to, if we get 3, 4, 5 years into it and that data comes back and says that it's not effective, what have we done for that last amount of time, which is the tricky part to look at.
Right, no, I agree, but
Yep.
at some point, all right, for standards-based grading.
Yep.
It was, I don't know if it actually came up for board vote or if it just happened to be something that was, I honestly don't know how it started.
Yep.
I know it's been going on for a while.
Yep.
In my estimation, the implementation leaves something to be desired.
Yep.
So at some point, does the board have the option of saying, you know what, standard, that get rid of it, go back to what you were doing? There needs to be some sort of review mechanism in place for a topic such as that. I'm trying not to, I want a bigger picture thing. I'm trying
Right.
not to go just to that.
I think it's probably a conversation that we need to have administratively and with the faculty is, as we are making some of these changes, just to be mindful to have a measurement piece built in. So whether it's curricular, whether it's whatever we're doing, is to make sure that whether it's a financial measurement, a cost measurement, if it's curriculum, if it's test scores, what discipline, reduction of disciplines, reduction of tardies, whatever the initiative is, just to make sure that there's a measurement piece tied to that, and we make sure that we update the board on what that is for each of those. You know, whether it's a year, 3 years, 5 years, what we expect is gains, what we expect is successes. Is that what I'm?
So is that a
correct?
topic for future discussion, or is it that every time that we have a presenter that they're going to expect to hear what was your measurement and, you know?
He's asked him before, right?
Well, I think that's a discussion the board and the administration should have, because what I think is, I mean, I don't want to hear about everything they ever do, and I don't want to hear about it 4 months later and 6 months later. So I think there's a balance in there depending on what it is, I guess, so.
I'm just trying to figure out if we've defined it well enough to come back as a topic.
Todd?
I think so.
You think so?
Yep.
Okay. So then,
Yeah, I hear you.
Thank you.
okay, any other topics?
Thank you, Mr. Raleigh.
Public comments, any public comments? No? All right, so we do not have executive session. I guess there's something to even read. The video will end at the end of tonight's meeting, and so we'll go to a vote to adjourn. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
This has got to be one of
Makes me so happy when I get to go to bed on time.